Hey, and welcome back. Last time we finished up talking about inspiration, both quiet and forced. Now we got to talk about expiration, quiet expiration. Okay, this is going to be entirely a passive process, meaning no muscular contraction is going to be occurring. So basically, what happens is the phrenic and intercostal nerves stop firing. In response to this, the diaphragm and external intercostals relax. In doing so, the rib cage goes in, the diaphragm goes up, thoracic volume gets smaller, lung volume gets smaller, alveolar pressure, i.e., lung pressure, goes up, and air flows out of the lungs into the trachea, into the larynx, and beyond. So that is normal quiet expiration. Now, this dude right here had some chronic emphysema. Notice his big chest. Okay, he was a smoker for a long time, and his smoking caused emphysema. The emphysema caused the destruction of elastic fibers in his lungs. My question for you is, why would the destruction of elastic fibers in his lungs lead to his big old chest? Think about that. Let me know what you come up with. All right, forced expiration, blowing out a candle, blowing up a balloon. In order to move more air, well, the pressure gradient's got to be bigger, so lung pressure's got to be even greater, which means lung and thoracic volume have got to be even smaller. How do we do this? Well, we use other muscles. We'll use our rectus abdominis, plus our obliques, internal and external, plus our transverse abdominis going across. And these guys all compress your abdominal cavity. If you're breathing out hard, like really try and breathe out, you should feel your abs contracting. All right? This is why you're supposed to breathe out when you're doing the concentric motion and lifting weights. All right? Because when you breathe out, you contract your abdominal musculature, which stabilizes your core. Okay, so not only what's going on here? Well, the abdominal muscle, by compressing the abdomen, by compressing that cavity, you're squeezing your guts. Your guts try and go up. They push your diaphragm up, which pushes your lungs up, which enhances the pressure there. Okay, what else? Over here, we got the internal intercostals. They're going to pull your ribs down and in. Down and in, making the rib cage and thus the lungs smaller. I'm going to skip these guys. If you're really mad at me, let me know in the hallway. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about the resistance in airways. Normally, airway resistance is pretty insignificant because the airways are relatively large in diameter and air has a low viscosity. However, if there's a lot of bronchoconstriction, diameter goes down, resistance goes up. If there's a buildup of fluid or mucus in the airway, that'll increase resistance. And by the way, bronchoconstriction can be a result of an allergic reaction. How do we deal with that? Well, we use some sort of sympathetic mimic, some sort of chemical that mimics your sympathetic nervous system, because your normal sympathetic response is to dilate your bronchioles, to dilate your airways. And this totally makes 100% sense, because if you're running away from something, you want to get a lot of air in and a lot of air out. So dilating your airways is what you're going to do in a sympathetic response. So if someone has a peanut allergy, they'd probably carry an EpiPen, because that epinephrine will help bronchodilate, which will help reduce the resistance that can increase during an allergic reaction. Wow. All right. Let's talk about surface tension. So, water has surface tension, where the molecules of water at the surface are grabbing onto each other, or hydrogen bonding with each other, with enough strength, for lack of a better word, to create surface tension. And what that means is that there's a strong cohesion of water at the interface between water and air. There's enough cohesion of water there for bugs like a water strider or a basilisk to walk on, for you to float a paperclip upon. Now, why does this matter? Why does the fact that water really likes water matter to us and matter to the lungs? All right, well, this is an alveolus right here. Remember, when you breathe in, you hydrate, humidify the air. So these little yellow guys here are water molecules. They like each other a lot. All right, they bind to each other. Okay, that's surface tension. And they want to maximize their binding to each other. So they don't want all this air in between them. They're going to all move inward so they can interact with each other more. And what this does is it promotes alveolar collapse. This is obviously a bad thing because if the alveoli are collapsed, then with every inhale, with every inhalation, you got to uncollapse them, and that's hard to do. Luckily, we have surfactant. Remember that chemical we talked about several lectures ago, made by your type 2 alveolar cells? Surfactant lowers surface tension in your alveoli, which is great because it makes it easier to breathe. Infants that are born prematurely often don't have enough surfactant yet. So it can be really hard for them to breathe without a little bit of pharmaceutical or manual intervention. Okay, a couple questions for you here. I'll let you do these on your own. That way I can keep going. And we can talk about compliance of your lungs. Compliance is basically another way to say stretchiness. Your lungs have got to be able to stretch in order for you to inhale. Anything that decreases the amount of normal lung tissue would decrease your compliance. So if you had scar tissue formation in your lungs, that would decrease compliance. If you didn't have enough surfactant, you'd have too much surface tension, and that would increase compliance. A buildup of fluid around the lungs would decrease compliance as well. Another thing to consider is, in order for the lungs to be able to stretch, the thoracic cage has got to be able to stretch as well, especially that costal cartilage there. As you get older, this costal cartilage gets stiffer and your thoracic compliance goes down. How do you avoid this? Well, by exercising. If you're going to exercise, then you're going to be breathing heavily and deeply, repeatedly, and that helps stretch out this cartilage. Okay, what else? Earth right there. Third planet from the sun, your favorite rocky midget planet. Earth is awesome because it has an awesome atmosphere. The main gas in the atmosphere is nitrogen, but we don't really care about nitrogen as far as this class goes. Unless you're scuba diving, you don't really care about nitrogen too much. You don't care about nitrogen for two reasons. Number one, the atoms of nitrogen in that N2 molecule right there are held together by a triple bond, which is really stable. So nitrogen is not really interacting. It's not reacting with you very much. Plus, nitrogen's not very soluble. So it's not very likely to dissolve into your blood. Now we got about 21% oxygen, a little bit of CO2, a little bit of water vapor as well. Now what I want you to do is compare the atmospheric composition right here with the composition of the air in your alveoli. Notice that oxygen has gone down. That makes sense because your blood is stealing it. Notice that CO2 is going up. That makes sense because it's moving from the blood into the alveoli. Notice that water has gone up. That makes sense because we humidify the inspired air. And nitrogen changed a little bit, mostly as a reflection of the other changes because we don't really care about nitrogen. Okay, there are three main factors affecting the exchange of gases in your alveoli between the alveolar air and the blood. Ventilation-perfusion coupling, and all that really is a fancy way of saying we got to match airflow to blood flow and match blood flow to airflow. You don't want to send blood to pulmonary capillaries where there's no new air arriving. You don't want to send air to alveoli where blood isn't coming through the neighboring pulmonary capillaries. Also, we got to talk about the thickness of the respiratory membrane, as well as talk about partial pressure gradients and solubilities. And I am thinking we're going to save that for next time. So next time, my friends, we're going to pick up with ventilation-perfusion coupling. All right. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.